There we go. A very good evening to you all and welcome to the State of Scottish Football. It's Friday night. What a weekend we've got coming up. Celtic v Rangers, Premiership, transfer window. Oh, we've got it jam-packed. Greg, I'm Dave Smith, by the way. Better not come and say who I am. But what a team we have tonight. Two guys going to the pub. We're in our own flats. And I'm with the one, the only, the Greg Playfair.
Good evening, Dave. I hope you're well. I'm assured you've had your afternoon siesta, so I'm sure you'll be full of beans and ready to discuss, obviously, the weekend's action of 6 games, which are strangely enough, really enough, on a Saturday, which will be good. But I'm doing well. How are things with you?
Yeah, very, very good. Had my nap this afternoon. Ready to go for a Friday edition of the State of Scottish Football. So there's one place to start, and that's at Celtic Park for tomorrow's Celtic v Rangers encounter. It's going to be a massive game, Greg, and a big marker for both sides at this early stage of the season.
Yeah, definitely. I was obviously looking before coming on tonight, just sort of seeing the comments pre-match. And Postecoglou, of course, saying this is of zero kind of impact in terms of the course of the season. He's quite right to feel quite bullish about it as well in terms of his side. You know, is that 21 goals scored, 1 conceded in 5 games, and obviously 9 were against the men up in Tayside last weekend, but still a real kind of formidable challenge for Rangers. Looking at it in terms of from a Rangers perspective, and I'm not wearing Rangers colours, it's just a blue, black and white top that I just happen to be wearing. So again, there's no allegiances to either side in the game tomorrow. But I think for Giovanni Van Bronckhorst as well, this is probably a must not lose game. Again, it's going to be really difficult in terms of how he approaches this. We know Celtic, we've seen obviously last season when they played Rangers at Celtic Park, they go gung-ho, they go right from the start, kind of go for the throats of Rangers, try and, get a couple of early goals, which again with that game last year, that midweek game under the lights at Parkhead, I'd imagine that's how Celtic want to approach. But in terms of how I see Rangers perhaps looking into the game, I think possibly looking at what they've done against PSV, you may see both Kamara, who didn't get a deadline day move to Nice, which would have been nice. Sorry about the terrible pun there for Celtic fans going into this game tomorrow. But I think him and Lundstrom will perhaps. In fact, I don't know if is Lundstrom back. Is he still banned actually, John Lundstrom?
I think I'll go and clarify that, but I think he's back tomorrow.
Yeah, I think he's back. I asked the Rangers fan about it. He thought he was going to start tomorrow, but just sudden deja vu in terms of that. Oh yeah, he's red card rescinded. Of course, he's not banned. Yeah, there we go. Aye, there we go. So interesting. But yeah, for me. We'll dissect it in a wee sec, but I think for Celtic, this is a game that I'd expect them to win. But for Rangers looking into it, they'll be wanting it as a kind of don't get beat and leave with something. How do you see it going?
Do you know what the big problem for me will be tomorrow from a Rangers point of view? I think it'll be Goldson and Sands because they don't have an understanding. And it's going to be interesting to see how Maeda, Kyogo and Jota in particular get on against the Rangers free. And then not just those players that I've mentioned either, Greg. You've also got O'Reilly, you've got Hatate perhaps, sorry. You've got the new guy that signed that's Danish, I've forgotten his surname, but you've got a lot of quality players in there, Celtic. And it's going to be interesting to see how Rangers get on. I mean, Rangers have played sides that have a certain calibre compared to Celtic, but at the same time as well, it's going to be interesting to see how they get on against a formidable attacking force. Because I'll be honest, I don't know if the guys in the viewers agree, but I would honestly say that the Celtic attack that they have, the Rangers defence hasn't faced somebody of that magnitude yet. Haaland was injured when they played Dortmund. Leipzig and Kunku had an off night. There's nobody as formidable in the Premiership or domestically here in Scotland. In European soil, there's been hardly anybody. I don't think Rangers or Goldson Sands in particular will face a backline such as what they'll face tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think in terms of when you look at Kyogo, what's that, 6 goals already he scored. just in the Premiership alone. I think as well, I'm trying to get the stats up here, but obviously, I think even before I was looking on it, I know it's only been a couple of games into the season, but you've got Lila Ba that's on 4 goals, Jota that's on 3, Starfield Jens, they're chipping in as well. So Celtic have goals from set pieces as well. From obviously, you've obviously got the inverted wing backs that come in as well. I think going back to it in terms of how Rangers approach it, you may find that again, as I said, Rangers probably have to approach it like a Champions League game. They have to kind of. It's always hard when you play Celtic Rangers that you try and take the emotion out of it. I think for Rangers, they would have to. Again, not get drawn in. I think Celtic will attack early. You could see Lundstrom being deployed back in there as part of the back three. I mean, Goldson obviously had that understanding last season at times. Sands, from speaking to Rangers associates, which I'm sure not a lot of people on viewing this will have Rangers associates, but he's impressed a lot of Rangers fans. He'll obviously get the nod tomorrow as well. But I just think in terms of, you're right, in terms of a test of Kyogo, I think Jota as well. I think the other one you mentioned, Maeda, I don't know if Postecoglou might be inclined to start with Abada again tomorrow. I think Abada's obviously he's really, really unfortunate not to be starting for Celtic. But obviously Maeda will kind of have that running. Again, he probably could do a half marathon in the morning, play the game, do a half marathon at night. It's a cool down. He's that sort of fit of a player. So we might see him starting, but you're right in terms of the middle of the pitch. I think O'Reilly, McGregor. I think the Danish player on about is Abdulgard.
Does the Belgrade come in?
I don't think it does. I think even with obviously Haksabanovic as well, who the other winger signed as well. I mean, these are quality players. They're internationals, but I mean, you look how strong that Celtic side is. This time last year, Celtic were kind of getting lampooned, and obviously Postecoglou came in trying to implement a new style. Obviously, 5 games last season, they weren't top of the league and with such dominance. But I think, the fact that you've seen the contrast from this season to last season, where Postecoglou had the whole pre-season at work with his team, get the guys that he wants. They've done a lot of business early, even getting Carter Vickers tied down, getting Jota tied down. Big expenditures, but certainly worth it. But yeah, be interesting to see how Celtic line up in terms of, as I said, I personally would start Abada. I don't know what some of the viewers would say, but over Maeda, I think he's just got that bit of quality as well, and that's not dismissing Maeda, but if Celtic were needing to get another goal or chase something, Maeda's a guy I would bring on, but they've got so much quality. I mean, from a Rangers point of view, Dave, what do you think would be the tactics for them to get something from the game?
That's a big question. I mean, Rangers, obviously, I think Kovac will play a massive part for Rangers tomorrow, but it's not just about striker either, because when you look at the whole team, they've obviously had a reasonable and pleasant start to the season, but I can see John McLaughlin starting the goals tomorrow, but I think John McLaughlin's a big game, because if John McLaughlin has not an error, but if he has an error of judgment or a mistake, I think he'll be heavily ridiculed quickly, because he's obviously had a wee error against USG in the Champions League. He obviously saved himself afterwards, but I think John McLaughlin, if he comes in, needs to have an error-free Old Firm display, or else the media will be on to him imminently. Tavernier will be a no-brainer as far as Rangers are concerned. I'm struggling to look at answers with regards to who comes in this centre-half area, because that's an area in which Rangers are struggling as a centre-half area. Leon King's not really he's not really a centre-half, so Leon King's probably, it'd be too big a game for Leon King as well, I think, as well. So I think it'll be Goldson and Sands, and I do get what people are saying about Sands. It shouldn't have been in the park last week, but that's a different conversation. And that was Monday's conversation. So a lot's happened since Monday. Barisic will be in at left back, I think. Lundstrom, and there's no warrants. So the big question is, who comes into that defensive midfield area? For me, I think Ryan Jack will start tomorrow. I think having somebody with that steel, with an aggressiveness, with an arrogance about him. I think it's a game for Ryan Jack. It's very ridiculous for me to give him parallels with Scott Brown. That would just be ludicrous as hell. It'd be a massive understatement. But Scott Brown was renowned for playing in these types of games and having that type of performance in him, and it would help in terms of it would obviously help Celtic go win the game. And Ryan Jack's not similar, but he plays similar style of way, and I think that would prove to be pivotal. So I can see him coming in with Lundstrom tomorrow. Right, probably Tillman and Kent. I can see them continuing the three that played against Ross County last week, and then Kovac up front. And I mean, if you were Ange Postecoglou to start off with, I think if you got, well, in fact, I'll take that back because I'm debating whether Scott Wright will start tomorrow. I think Sakala might get a nod. Stephen Davis, perhaps even. Probably for that experience. Maybe Stephen Davis might come in top once for that experience. There's a lot of thinking for Van Bronckhorst, I think.
Yeah, I think Arfield might get a nod as well. Obviously, Arfield always is a similar range. Well, was a Celtic fan or something growing up, I think, Arfield. But Arfield obviously knows the occasion. I mean, Tillman, I think, will play. He'd be one I wouldn't be surprised if he was dropped, given the magnitude of the game as well. I know we'd play in a couple of games for Bayern Munich's first team, but I think for me, even when you look at it as well, obviously we're talking about starting lineups as well, but do you think it's a game which, with tomorrow, obviously both teams in the Champions League, I don't think both teams will be resting players with view to midweek in terms of those fixtures, but do you see the substitutes having a kind of massive impact on tomorrow's game? And flip side to that as well, what do you think about the strength and depth for both of the sides?
Yeah, I can't see them playing weekend sides or playing players that really should be playing in these types of games, because I mean the league's always the bread and butter for both Celtic and Rangers, and if Ange Postecoglou was to play the same lineup that he did against Ross County on Wednesday, just to give you an example, I think there'd be a lot of people irate about that whole thing. The opinion would obviously change come 2:15 on Saturday afternoon if Celtic won the game, but yeah, I can see both teams playing their strongest 11s, and then recovery is a big thing in football, Greg, where both teams are recovered in the best way possible, and then obviously attention turns to their respective Champions League games through the week, and I think it's good. Obviously, we've got two Scottish clubs in the Champions League this year, and I mean, Rangers have been used to the fact that they've played maybe a game on a Sunday against a Dundee United or somebody, or even a Celtic for that precise matter, and then still want to beat a Dortmund or a Leipzig or a Braga the following Thursday. So Rangers are probably more experienced in this than Celtic are. For Celtic, I mean, Ange Postecoglou is renowned for doing very, very well in home style against Rangers in the league terms, so he'll be relishing this with every step of the way tomorrow. He'll be looking for a big performance from his guys, and then obviously into the Champions League. And it's a big week for Celtic because I think Champions League needs to take as much precedence as the league does. So it's a big test for both sides tomorrow. And yeah, I think if Celtic, I don't want to get too cliche here, Greg, but I think the first goal is important tomorrow.
Yeah, I think Rangers, I said this to some, again, friend at work, they would have to keep it tight first 15-20 minutes, I said, because I think Celtic would, I know there's comments here with supporters of obviously Celtic saying go for the throats of Rangers, get right in their faces, which again, I think that's a hallmark of any Celtic season of Postecoglou. They go early, they kind of dominate possession, they suffocate teams, they draw them out, and I said, I think Rangers will look to counter, which is why both Kent and Cholak will play. I think when you look at the business from both the sides, I was maybe expecting Rangers yesterday to bring in a striker, which kind of leads us to the conundrum as well. As I know Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has been saying that Alfredo Morelos has responded well, he's been training. Is this a sort of game in which you've in fact, is Morelos still suspended? This is what I was. Is Morelos suspended for this game as well, or was it a one match ban?
I don't think so, because Van Bronckhorst was speaking about the fact that he's going to be back in tomorrow on his interview with Sky Sports earlier today. So I think as far as Morelos is concerned, I think he'll play a role tomorrow of some sort. I can't see him starting. I'll put that
no, I'm not starting. I'm not starting.
I think it's the type of game where if the Celtic defence needs troubled, if they need pressured, if they need competition, he's the type of player for me that's perfect to come on with 15 to play if he can keep his attitude to the level required for being a Rangers player. If not, see you later.
Yeah, there's a question here from Strangelove the Doctor saying, so question obviously, if Cholak were to pick up a bad injury, how would that set Rangers up for the Champions League? Do you think, even tomorrow, obviously, you see in which the games are played, it's a frenetic pace, it's, as I said, it will be 100 miles an hour, it's like a game like no other, which obviously commentators and fans from around the world say that, but if Cholak was to pick up a knock in the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, is that something you could count on Morelos tomorrow to come on and lead the line? Do you even think if that were the situation, like maybe Kent would be trusted up front of his own, Rami Matondo? Do you think that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst would entrust Morelos to play a massive part in the game tomorrow, or even for kind of the next few weeks if anything were to happen to Cholak?
I think it's a big question because when you look at Cholak, he's also started life at Ibrox very, very well. Morelos has kind of went off the boil through a range of circumstances, through injury, through relationship deteriorating. When I mean relationship deteriorating initially with Van Bronckhorst, but it seems to be rectified now. And if Morelos has come back, and I think if he came on tomorrow, just to give you an example, I think there's a lot of pressure on Morelos tomorrow because obviously everybody in Scotland will be watching the game, or predominantly the majority of the country will be watching the game. And a lot of people will look at Morelos to say body language, attitude, desire towards the game, his application, his approach. There'll be 5 big questions if Morelos plays tomorrow. So 5 questions which you'd have to tick with every every passing move, because if he doesn't, I think a lot of the media and a lot of the pundits and a lot of the fans of Scottish football would be raising a lot of questions regarding Morelos. And if Colwash was to pick up an injury, as Strangelove the Doctor has mentioned, and be out for 8 weeks, which would take them up to near enough the start of the World Cup, which would mean he'd missed the whole of the Champions League group stage for Rangers. It would mean a whole other responsibility for Morelos, something which I don't think he'd be able to compete with.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a few other commenters as well are saying that James Tavernier's kind of been struggling to train all week until today. Again, that's maybe something as well which a lot of people were surprised with, that obviously Tavernier's a Rangers captain. He plays every game when you're captain, but if he were to get up an injury or even in tomorrow's game, what would Rangers do? Because I think they're only a recognised right back is the young lad Devine who plays in the B team. So again, do you think Rangers are, again, I'm going to put you on the spot, Dave, because I'm nice like that. In terms of the obvious impact of the rest of the season, do you think Celtic have an advantage in terms of their squad, in terms of a clear advantage? Because for me, I would say they do in terms of the strength and depth. Even we're saying that the guys they've brought in, even the last few days, they're players that are nice to have rather than Celtic necessarily need them. I'm not a Celtic fan, but do you think, I'm looking at Rangers and I think they need players to actually kind of compete? You could argue a goalkeeper, a right back, another striker. You mentioned centre half. Do you think that obviously this will have an impact, and even just psychologically, say Rangers get something away from the game, do you think that would augur well for the next few weeks, or just looking at it in terms of the title charge, like who's going to take advantage of this?
I think it does, because Rangers, when they played Dortmund, Braga and Leipzig last season, and got positive big results, gained big gains from them results and performances, and that obviously helped in terms of their business end of the season, because they managed to get the big results, they managed to get momentum, they managed to do very, very well domestically. When domestically, that was their Achilles heel towards the tail end of last season, and then obviously managed to win the Scottish Cup, beating the Hearts by 2-0 after extra time, which was a sore one for Pearsoff and Hearts, obviously. But yeah, it also helped Rangers in terms of they had that streetwise mentality, they had a difference about their play, they had a different side to their game, and that was what stood Rangers out in good stead. And I think they need a result of this magnitude again tomorrow to kick them on again, because Rangers have had a few disappointments already so far this season, where they've been beat by USG in the first leg before rescuing the tie. They needed to go to Holland and win PSV, especially after drawing 2-2 in that first leg, which was huge for Rangers. They've also gained a lot of confidence from that, because in league terms, Celtic and Rangers are far superior to the rest of the league, and that's obviously telling me the results we're getting so far. So I think in terms of Rangers, they're getting a lot of confidence from the big results they're getting. If they can get a big one tomorrow, pardon me, then that's obviously a big one in terms of the Champions League coming up. So in terms of Rangers, they've got a lot to play for, but at the same time as well, they've got a lot of confidence from the results that inherited so far this season. So I think Rangers are in a really, really good place. But for Celtic as well, I think they need a confidence boosting result as well, because Celtic have been untried and untested at Champions League level compared to Rangers, because Celtic didn't exactly deliver to the high standards that they expect in European football. And for me, Celtic did enough in the domestic games, in the one-to-ones against Rangers last season. But this has got a different meaning tomorrow, I think, because you're playing Rangers tomorrow where there's 3 points up for grabs. Get the 3 points, great. Move on to Champions League, then back onto the domestic programme. And then afterwards, you've obviously got Champions League. There's a lot of pressure that lies ahead with that. And I think there's still plenty of swings and roundabouts to come, irrespective of what happens tomorrow, because Rangers go to Pittodrie next Saturday. And with the way Aberdeen are playing just now, that could easily be 2 points dropped or even 3 points dropped for as far as Van Bronckhorst's side is concerned.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even you're saying, obviously, in terms of the game tomorrow, it's 3 points, but it's bigger than that. It's bigger than 3 points. It's bragging rights at work. It's, you can go in for the next, obviously it's to New Year when the next game is. Have that. Even it doesn't matter how, if you drop points elsewhere, you've got that kind of bragging. You've got that over your people at work, family. But looking at the game tomorrow, I do think it will come down to like strength and depth from the bench, and obviously I think we've mentioned that in a lot of the viewers as well. I don't think in terms of like any significant game changer, and this might haunt me. I don't know who Rangers can bring on, but we're talking about a guy, maybe mentioned like Giakis as well, who, listen, every team in Scotland, and you could argue Rangers as well would be a kind of first pick in terms of certainly up front for every team in the league as well. It's just head and shoulders above everyone else. You've got guys like that are kind of on the bench. As I said, you've got kind of two international wingers. You've got that obviously Haksabanovic. You've got obviously Maeda, potential two wingers coming up. James Forrest. I mean, it's an embarrassment.
I thought Forrest was good on Wednesday at Ross County. Yeah,
definitely. And I think someone of his, I think that's what you get from James Forrest. I think he's really, really consistent. Obviously, he's had these kind of injuries over the last couple of years, but even for club and country, he's someone that you can always depend upon. He's been played up front. He's played right wing back. He's a right winger. Played on the left. Like, I don't think he lets anyone down. And as I said, like, obviously, I think now with the kind of increased size and bench as well, that he'll obviously be involved. But like, in years gone by when you had 5 or 7 subs, like probably like James Forrest wouldn't be on the bench, and that tells you how strong Celtic are. But in terms of a scoreline tomorrow, as I said, I do think it will come down to benches. And although my scoreline is going to be a bit like, oh, you're going to say this, I think it will come to 2 late goals in the second half. And I do think the quality, the fitness will kind of show in terms of the two sides. And I do think it'll be Celtic 2, Rangers 0. What about yourself?
2-1 Celtic.
2-1 Celtic. Close. We'll keep telling that for next week as well. Obviously, I think I'm on Monday show as well, so we'll see if anyone can come on and tell me I'm right or wrong, but maybe a good omen or bad omen. But probably next place to start, Dave, we'll go down the kind of fixtures as well, as Hibernian versus Kilmarnock, where Hibs will line up tomorrow without the manager Lee Johnson, who is waiting for surgery at the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary for gallbladder, I believe. Again, his operations went well. We wish him all the best, and that's coming from a Jambo as well. But Hibs Kilmarnock, this game does take a kind of slightly different perspective as well, given that Hibs have made 3 signings on deadline day, including Will Fish. It's not my place to make any fish jokes, and that'll be you, Dave. They've also signed Mykola Kukarevich as well, a young 21-year-old Ukrainian under-21 national from Twa in France, and they've also signed, apparently they got over the line, Harry McCurdy from Swindon Town after initially retracting their previous offer and lowballing them. McCurdy's made it in. He's also got himself a kind of Hibs-inspired haircut, and he's got the bleach cropped blonde hair as well. But we'll start with that game. We'll talk about Kilmarnock in a sec. But what do you make of the transfer deadline day business from Hibs?
I thought it was a disappointing transfer deadline day from Hibs because Dylan Tate, the GOAT, has signed for a Abroaf. So there you go. They've lost their best player. No, I'm joking. No, when you look at Hibs, I mean, they had to get acquisitions and they've done that. I mean, they've had to look a bit left field, such as bringing in Will Fisher on loan from Manchester United, and they've taken McCurdy from Swindon, and that deal got completed at 3 in the morning last night.
Yeah, they tweeted about like 1:30 in the morning, which is always a strange time to tweet. But then it was like subject to FIFA approval and stuff like that. Which, again, I think there's a case about a guy in France as well, which hasn't went over the line and they announced it, and then I think it was announced by Leeds, and then he went back to another team in France, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I've not seen it's all been confirmed, whatever. But I'm assuming so. Otherwise, I don't want Hibs to have egg on their face in terms of.
Just for clarification to viewers, the McCarthy stumbling block was Swindon more than Hibs. Swindon's paperwork didn't go until very, very late, so that's why the whole deal got a little bit delayed. But on the transfer dealings for Hibs, I think they've made some good additions, but I think the proof of they put in come tomorrow, because obviously they play a Kilmarnock side out of the Sargent after a very, very good weekend in Kilmarnock colours. Obviously, Hibs needed a lot of adjustments, and they needed adjustments in a short space of time. Obviously, they've lost Christian George to Kilmarnock, and he can't play tomorrow, of course, because obviously the cup tie situation with that. But I can see the attacking three for Hibs remaining in the way that they are tomorrow. McCurdy, if it goes through, could possibly play some form of action tomorrow. But I don't know what you think, Greg, but I can see Martin Boyle playing the number 9 role tomorrow.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. I'd imagine Boyle up top. Maybe Boyle and Melkerson will probably play. I don't know. Obviously, it's a bit different as well, June McAllister. I mean, I'm sure he'll have had the team instructions from Lee Johnson anyway in terms of how to set up. But I'd imagine Boyle will be up top. I mean, that Kilmarnock defence, you'll have seen Ash Taylor in your time, obviously watching Aberdeen as well. Good big guy, but he can be got if you can run at him. So I'd imagine that's probably the kind of tactics there. But yeah, in terms of his other signing as well that they made, obviously the young 6'4".
Does Will Fish come in place of Hanlon or Porteous? Do you think Hanlon's
Hanlon? Yeah, definitely. I think Fish will start tomorrow. I think it was telling as well in Lee Johnson's comments, we welcome him with open arms. And I think, again, for the last 3 or 4 windows, I always see Hibs fans saying, we need a centre-back. I mean, when the likes of Darren McGregor still kind of on the bench on a match day as your centre-back cover, I mean, I thought McGregor had retired and was taking up a role with it. I think he actually has, like this Hibs 23s or development team. I think he's manager or assistant coach or something to do with that. I thought he was done, and then he's getting rolled out on a Saturday for the Hibs bench. So I'd imagine Smith plays. I think Hanlon, he's not been great for the last couple of years, in fairness, but listen, a loyal servant at the club. He's been there, one club man. So it might be a sort of constant treatment which might happen to him. He might kind of end up towards like a St Johnstone maybe in January. They'll have taken on older pro. But I think Hibs definitely to win tomorrow. I think, again, we mentioned around for Rangers not being a kind of must lose. Rangers are in a position where they can't lose the game tomorrow, and I think Hibs are in a position where they have to win. Given that, as I said, Kilmarnock, Derek McKenna's streetwise side, I'd imagine they're going to come here tomorrow with a lot of confidence as well, following their midweek win at Tynecastle against my side. So you might see some of the guys that started on Wednesday night playing a part there. And as Cameron, for example, might be rewarded with a start in this game. But you've got guys like Kel Lafferty and Ollie Shaw who they don't need any extra motivation to play well against Hibs. Ennis Murray as well, who again don't know if he'll necessarily start, but I'm sure he'll feature at some point. guys that have been at Hibs as well, which will have the grip between their teeth to kind of do well. Kilmarnock, what do you think of their squad? Do you think they needed to add into, and for me, I thought they needed to add to kind of midfield. I thought it looks a bit weak there. I think it's been said in another sort of podcast as well. That Kilmarnock are a bit soft in the middle there. What's your take on?
They played a 3-5-1-1 on Wednesday, Greg. And what I found funny about that 3-5-1-1 was that they had Paul Worth, Donnelly, and Armstrong in midfield now. Donnelly would have been William Donnelly, of course, who is a central midfielder, but as you say, it lacks a little bit of strength. It lacks a little bit of character in that midfield area. I think Kilmarnock needed somebody that's got a bit of a central midfield pedigree about them, and Armstrong was renowned for being a wide player rather than a central midfield player. I can understand why Dell did it to an extent, because obviously the way Hearts play, you kind of need your midfield congested just because Hearts like to bomb on, they like to get on the front foot early doors. So I can understand why Dell did it in that specific way, but irrespective of it, I'd have liked to have seen him bringing in midfield. Also, Lewis Mayo is probably better. Well, I don't know the whole ins and outs behind Lewis Mayo, but he can play midfield as well. So for me, I'd have liked to have tried to get in a centre half as well. A centre half that was as commanded as Ash Taylor. Now, Ash Taylor has his critics, but when you look at the overall context of that game, he plays like a leader. He maybe has the error that he'll be liable to an error, but he'll play like a leader. And that's exactly what Step McInnes sees him, which is why he brings him to every club he's been at, especially in Scottish football terms with Aberdeen and Kilmarnock. They're right in there as well. Rory McKenzie, they've obviously played him in the correct position, I think, because he plays as number 10 rather than number 9. And I thought him and Cameron linked up very, very well the other night. And obviously, Innes Cameron scores that goal. And then Innes Cameron could have been on his way out of Kilmarnock, because I know a broker tried to get him on loan. So that could have easily been a situation that didn't exactly materialise. So for Innes Cameron to go and score that goal at Tynecastle Wednesday shows how hungry he is to do well in the Kilmarnock shirt.
Yeah, I think, again, listen to another podcast, I'm sure Innes Cameron had been offered to every championship club in Scotland this season as well, so he could have ended up at a number of them. But yeah, I think you're right there in terms of the kind of Kilmarnock, how they play under Derek McInnes. I think Ash Taylor as well, you're saying, is that he's a good solid player in this league as well. Again, you could tell last season he was better in the championship, but I mean, again, people will debate where he's a top 6 or a centre half as well. But I'm just thinking there, you talk about a midfielder, which again links with Derek McInnes, is maybe someone like Dylan McGeoch, who is on a free transfer. He might be someone that, again, Derek McGeoch. I don't know if that's his dad, Dylan's dad, but I don't know if Derek McInnes would fancy, getting him back in there as well. Just a sort of player that kind of intelligent number 8 that can kind of link the play forward. Again, can kind of control it. I mean, they've got Polworth there, Donnelly, who actually started off as a centre half, had a trial with Hearts many years ago as well when he got released by Fulham. Again, Armstrong, you're saying that as a kind of winger. Kerr McInroy as well, who kind of came from Celtic. I'm sure a lot of people.
I watched him at Montrose for Kilmarnock, and I was impressed with Kerr.
Yeah, he's someone as well that might come into the play tomorrow. I think that sort of game tomorrow at Easter Road is kind of where you'd want to bring in a Kerr McInroy as well. Again, probably got more legs and looks like a kind of, I said, Dylan McGeoch or obviously a Polworth as well, who's obviously in there as in the squad. Donnelly, I think, will probably start tomorrow as well. Bit of a kind of no-nonsense, defensive-minded midfielder. But I don't know. I think looking at it, I'm just intrigued as to how Hibs will line up, whether this McCurdy will actually get a start. I mean, he seems a bit of a character. So for those that don't know, he got a suspension earlier on this season after he was red carded in a game for Swindon, and then he proceeded to go into the referee's dressing room and then shake a protein shake all over the referee's suit. So got his knuckles wrapped on that. So he's a bit of a character. I know he scored against Man City last season as well for Swindon in the FA Cup. So obviously he has scored against some decent defenders as well. I don't know whether he would start tomorrow. I mean, I think he will feature if it goes through in time. But yeah, I don't know. Obviously, as a Jambo, I'd like Hibs to get beat tomorrow. But I think it will be... I'm going to say this is going to be a bit of a bore fest, unfortunately, for any viewers watching it. I think it's going to be 0-0 tomorrow.
1 each, 1-1.
1-1. Cool. As I said, I can't see Hibs winning Touchwood, but I said I can't see Kilmarnock losing after obviously their exploits at Tynecastle during the week. And we will move on to Hearts now. Obviously, I'm in familiar territory now. We'll talk about Hearts v Livingston. Hearts travelled to the Tony Macaroni Stadium on the back of a kind of bruising defeat in the League Cup as well. But obviously, Livingston are kind of bruising after last week's 5-0 defeat up at Pittodrie. Obviously, we state of Scottish football exclusive. Again, I think if you're on Twitter at the moment, you might have seen it, but I think Hearts are set to announce the signing of ex-St Johnstone keeper Zander Clark, which, again, Hearts have to register their squad. I don't know if Celtic and Rangers were earlier this week, but Hearts need to announce or register their squad for the Europa League for next week. So I believe Zander Clark is going to sign. But that being said, obviously, he wouldn't necessarily play over Craig Gordon. But how do you see this game going tomorrow in terms of the two current sides, Dave?
I think it's going to be an interesting one, Greg, because Livingston have had a dour week. There's no other word to describe it, because Livingston capitulated and it was calamitous once Jack Fitzwater got sent off. And Fitzwater missed Wednesday's game against Dundee, not because of Pittodrie, because he was suspended for previous Premier Sports Cup bookings. So he'll miss tomorrow as well, obviously. So that's a big miss as far as Livingston are concerned. Livingston have shown that they can obviously be competitive in recent times, and they're obviously a side that play in the front foot, and obviously a side that play through the likes of John Newboy and all these other players. And we're just seeing them play tomorrow. I can see them sticking with the same back four tomorrow. I can see them going with George and goals, Devlin, Kelly, Oberline, Montano. Obviously, Stephen Kelly signed for Livingston from Rangers on Tuesday, and will be a decent enough addition, especially with Stephen Kelly looking for game time. And also the fact that Stephen Kelly is still in the Premiership with a decent enough club in Livingston tells you everything you need to know about his desire to keep going at the highest level in this country. It's the midfield area that I'm a little bit questionable with regards to how Livingston will set up. I think Jason Holt will play, Shirley will play, and then Omeniega will be the big question mark for me, whether he plays tomorrow. I can see Pittman playing, but I can really see Pittman dropping a bit deeper rather than playing as the custom number 10 position. So that could be interesting within itself. And I can see Newboy up front by himself. But I don't know if you agree, Greg, but I think Livingston need to try and be a two up front, especially against a side like Hearts, because Hearts are the kind of type of side that if you do play one at the back, you do find yourself isolated if you're one of the strikers. And I think Hearts are quite organised in the aspect that if you have a lack of bodies in the forward areas, Hearts will clear up all the goodies early doors. And I do think Martindale has to change it up a little bit. But as for Hearts, they're needing the action for Wednesday. There's no getting a way around it. I mean, they need a fast reaction for Wednesday.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll talk about Livingston before I can devour my Jambos. I think if I was Martindale, I would be looking to play a 4-4-2 as well. I think when Ross County played Hearts the first game of the season, they did that. Where Edwards was playing on the left, it was fantastic. Josh Sims on the right didn't really get much of an impact, but again, when you comparing there, they had obviously the two up top as well, which kind of caused Hearts problems. Teams I think Livingston have been playing with a back four anyway, but I think when you play a back three with Hearts, have only really got Shankland up top. Listen, keep your two centre halves occupied, but I think it's just in that wide area as well, because you're forcing, if it's going to be Josh Naylor or Alan Forrest, ex-Livy man, going back to Tony Macaroni, or Barry Mackay backwards as well to kind of help support. So I think Martindale will kind of play a 4-4, might be a 4-4-1-1, but I think Bruce Anderson as well, whether he comes on as a sub or whether he starts in tomorrow's game, I think he's a sort of player which, again, looking at Hearts' defence as well, that's kind of where there's a bit of fragility. I know of this parish, our own Graham Duffy, he's obviously mentioned around the need for centre-halves to be signed for Hearts. At this moment in time, there's not been another centre-half signed. I think Hearts are looking to go in the free agent market for that. So, I mean, potentially we're getting Stephen Kingsley back tomorrow. I'd imagine Lewis Nielsen will start. We may even see Toby Civic coming back in tomorrow. Who knows in terms of what Hearts do. But, yeah, listen, we can't get away from it. Midweek was a kind of bruising performance. It's, when you've not troubled the Kilmarnock keeper as well, especially at Tynecastle, it's a really, really sobering thing. Like, imagine if you're a Celtic fan, a Rangers fan, whatever, Aberdeen fan, you don't trouble opposition keeper in your own ground. It's not good enough. I think it does show that obviously Hearts, given the injury situation, I think there was 7 or 8 players injured, missing from the game on injury alone, so we didn't have that last season. That's obviously forced Hearts' hand. I wouldn't have been going round signing Xander Clark as my first sort of priority, but I do get it. If Craig Gordon, we mentioned about Rangers, if they were to lose Cholak or Tavernier, they're kind of snookered. Same way if Hearts were to lose Craig Gordon, we'd be snookered. So I do get Xander Clark. This signing might have been off for a few weeks, which I believe it has. Again, for those commenting, I think it's been announced on Twitter that Hearts are interested in signing him. Again, I've heard that for the last day or so. In terms of what Hearts need to do tomorrow, I think it'll probably be similar to the game or the lineup that played against St Johnstone at Tynecastle. I do see Ginnelly starting again, although it's toss of a coin on him or Forrest. I do think it'll be Ginnelly, Mackay, Shanklin up top, and then I think it's just a case of the Hearts go to a back 4 or the Hearts go to a 3. I'd imagine it might be a 4, given it probably won't just be big Newble up front on his own, but the Hearts definitely need to get this win here, because I think being a Hearts fan over the years, away form has been dreadful. To put it kind of mildly, I know over the last season we started quite well, wins at St Mirren and whatnot, but this is the sort of game, I always say this, right? I always seem to be on when Hearts are playing a team kind of lacking in confidence, lacking in form, and St Johnstone almost got that win at the weekend at Tynecastle. Lucky not to get a penalty, which wasn't shown on Sports and Highlights as well, in the first half as well, from a foul by Lewis Nielsen. But I do think Hearts will edge this. I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to say it's going to be a 2-1. It's not going to be plain sailing. We've seen last season Craig Gordon had to pull off a triple save within 30 seconds our last trip to the Tony Macaroni. But I do think it'll be sort of 2-1 Hearts. What's your thoughts, Dave?
Yeah, I think it'll be 2-1 Hearts as well. I think it'll be a really contested game, but I fancy Hearts to come out in this one with 2-1. Now, Greg, we're going to go on to two sides that won on Wednesday. That's Motherwell against Dundee United. Well, a week in football. I mean, you've got Stephen Hamill, who is doing pleasantly well with Motherwell so far. You're up against the Lee and Fox side that's turned things around in 24 hours at Dundee United. And I think it's going to be an intriguing game tomorrow, because you've got a Motherwell side that, as I said, have started pleasantly well. I think Motherwell played the front foot. Came back being is Ruud van Nistelrooy under Stephen Hamill, when he was Dick McTaggart under Graham Alexander. Just to give you a wee random name there, Dick McTaggart, for everybody that doesn't know, was a wee Sunday League player that was absolutely rubbish. So there you go. So yeah, there's that. Also, I think they've got a better understanding of each other now, Motherwell. I think they play with a better intensity about their play. I think they've got a better defensive organisation. William Kelly's came on a game again. His body attitude looked a little bit down. And I think one or two changes that Hamill's made has made a massive difference to the way Motherwell playing. As I said, they have a good understanding of each other. There's a good connection between the players, and Motherwell are going down a really good place. And that was shown behind the 4-0 win against the Inverness on Wednesday. Now, Motherwell had 2 penalties, and I'm going to where Mr. Doddsy went to Ford Crawford Allen, berated by the decisions. But I mean, Dundee on the other hand, they've got the comeback that they wanted on Wednesday, and the comeback they needed as well. And I think it kind of tells you that there was, even although it was only a short space of time, Greg, I think there was a rift between the players or certain players, i.e. that's been documented, such as Tony Watt and Jack Ross, because you don't go from being pitiful on Sunday lunchtime to being very, very organised and very compact and hitting on the front foot and getting 2 goals early doors under Liam Fox on the Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting both these sides meet because I think that, I mean, don't know what the viewers think as well. I think there's an element of player power in both these sides. Obviously, Graham Alexander was removed. I know there was Motherwell players like him, Stephen Hamill, and his wife's social media post was announced, and I think Liam Kelly said in one of the interviews, we feel like the shackles are off, we've got a bit more freedom. So obviously there was a bit of friction there. So obviously you can see there when players are happy when they play for the manager, results happen. And then even with Dundee United as well, where we've seen last weekend with Tony Watt and Charlie Mulgrew both dropped as well. Listen, they're both big characters, big egos. Jack Ross obviously had a falling out with them. Who knows? That's kind of what the kind of word on the street is. Alleged, yeah, word on the street. They've always had a bit of a bust up. And when these guys are put back in the side, you see obviously they're happy. It's a harmonious team, and obviously they go to Livingston and get a good result there. Which, listen, I don't think anyone would have thought that for Jack Ross going into that game had to be manager. So I do think the element of player power is kind of got the kind of listen. Both sides have kind of profited from that as well. Kind of it's easier these days to get rid of a manager than get rid of a team. So looking at that, I think tomorrow's game will be an intriguing lineup. Big Van Veen has came onto a game now as well, which again, I don't know if he'd known that Lewis Moult was kind of in this, there to get signed and Motherwell after a striker. Maybe that's inspired him, but I know from kind of other podcasts as well, and even from Jenna Thompson, who comes on here now and again, that Van Veen is kind of a player where you get maybe 1 in 5, 1 in 6 good games. The consistency's been the issue, whereas obviously, he started well under Hamill, so you'd hope that he's able to continue that form. And as I said in the past, when he played in England, he was linked at the time when the Chinese Super League was the league to go at. I think, was it Scunthorpe he was at, or Northampton? They rejected a £5 million bid for him from China. Such as his impact there. So you can kind of see that he's got a bit of quality about him as well. But going to this game, I think is interesting. Do you think, I'm going to pose you this question, do you think if Dundee United and Liam Fox's side, if they were to get a result tomorrow at Livingston, do you think that would increase his chances or put him in a good light to get the job on a permanent basis? He's obviously worked under Tam Courts. He's now obviously worked under Jack Ross. The transfer window's shut. It's quite hard to bring a manager in. I don't think they would want to bring in a new manager, new assistant, new backroom staff. Do you think if Dundee United were to win tomorrow, that would give Liam Fox a good chance of getting the gig?
I think so, yeah. But I think at the same time as well, it'll be interesting to see what's in Tony Arscore's mind, because does Tony Arscore go for continuity? Tony Arscore and continuity never goes in the same sentence, as we figured out, especially over these last few months with Jack Ross coming in and then obviously United looking for a new manager once again. So continuity isn't, I think, in Tony Arscore's mind. Or do we go to the mindset of the United taking their own people for freshness, for a refreshed start? It's a big question, because United, I don't think, can underestimate the job that Tam Courts and Wayne Fox did. And that was because they reached European football. Now, it has been a pitiful start to the season. In fact, pitiful maybe isn't even the right word here, because they started reasonably well. And then things faded and things become deteriorated. And that's how it all began to fall in a short space of time. And for me, I think if Foxy won it Motherwell tomorrow, I think it'd be massive for Foxy. But at the same time as well, I can't see the United board rushing this. I can see them going for a Michael O'Neill, who has been touted. Kevin Thompson's been touted as well, Greg. I don't think he's ready for a Dundee job.
How is he getting linked with these jobs? Honestly, I think you talk about.
Not ready.
Listen, I think it pays to have friends in the media because I think, listen, there's, Open Goal. I'm sure people that watch this podcast will also watch Open Goal. I think he gets trumped on that, and then, he's kind of in the public eye. It's just like when people used to go off the ball. Tam and Stuart would try and get whoever someone's at a job, a coach or a manager or a player would do their best to take them up, and then you would find that the player or coach manager would get one on the back of it. But yeah, I mean, I know Kevin Thompson played for Dundee. I don't think that will have any kind of bearing on if he were to get it, but I just don't think he's ready. I think he was interviewed for the Rafe job and didn't get the Rafe job over Ian Murray, or apparently pulled out, whatever you want to believe. Kilmarnock last season, he kind of lost to Derek McInnes. Listen, I think he also heard he was going to go down to QPR and work under Michael Beale. I don't know his next move. I mean, I think he will get a job, but with all due respect as well, I think Dundee United's quite a plum job in terms of the top flight. Not being a slander of any team, but if it was like a St Johnstone or a St Mirren, Ross County, I think those sides might be more inclined to kind of take a punt on Kevin Thompson rather than a Dundee United and Aberdeen, Hibs, Hearts. I don't think those sort of clubs would be a kind of move for Kevin Thompson. He would never come to Hearts. I would never want him at Hearts. But that being said, I mean, I think will be a bit of an unknown that might get them the United job. I think they don't do things conventionally, like we've seen before in terms of Tam Court's appointment. I think a lot of people out with the club or out with supporters wouldn't have had a clue who Tam Courts was. So I do see them kind of maybe going down a kind of a different road, or it could be Liam Fox, but we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to the Highlands, Ross County against Aberdeen. I think it's going to be an intriguing game tomorrow, Greg, because you've got a Ross County side who haven't started necessarily very well. Ross County do need a bit of a pick-me-up. They did get a good win over Kilmarnock last Saturday, in fact. That's how long the week has gone in Scottish football. But that was their first league win of the season. Funnily enough, I didn't realise it was as funny as that. And I think they need consistency. Ross County were renowned under Marky Mackay, Greg, for being a fortress at Dingwall. And it was, no team ever goes to Dingwall and finds himself having an easy game. But at the same time as well, you look at it and say it's not been good enough. But then at the same time, they've played Rangers, they've played Celtic, they've played Hearts. The only teams they've played of note that have similarities to them are Kilmarnock and St Mirren. I think tomorrow gives Ross County a good indication of where they're at. As for Aberdeen, hot and cold. Hot and cold in the aspect of they do get some big wins. They are playing some good football. But if Aberdeen are going to be classed as a top three side or a European credentials side, I think they need to be going to Dingwall and trying to get all 3 points tomorrow.
Yeah, it's definitely a game where Aberdeen supporters are Owen Glenn probably going to the Mallard before and getting himself well oiled for the game. It's a game that again you want to the fans want to enjoy the experience. Sorry, of Celtic fans were there last week. Enjoy it and get the win. Ross County, let's be honest here. This time last year they struggled. Everyone thought they were relegation fodder after their COVID disrupted League Cup, and then they were just struggling, and then they came up against Dundee that night. I can't remember if you were at the game covering it, but I know you certainly could. Remember we discussed it, the kind of 5-0 game for Ross County at Dens Park. That really kind of was the catalyst for kind of their upturn in form as well, and they can never look back. I do think, obviously, I've seen Ross County at Tynecastle earlier this season. I do think they really are a really, really good side. They seem quite settled. I know they've made a couple of additions there. Obviously, I said Uwara Edwards, he was the one that kind of scored the winner last week. He's not been playing recently. I think he did get a knock in that Hearts game. Obviously, Callahan and Baldwin were out as well. But again, it just kind of shows that the kind of squad that they've got there with those two guys who are seen as kind of two main men for the Staggies. They've got a good depth as well. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued for Ross County, but I'm also intrigued for Aberdeen. I'm going to ask you this. Christian Ramirez, number 99, obviously wanted away on deadline day. He's deleted his Instagram, he's deleted his Twitter. He was in talks with Hearts, or Hearts did inquire about him. I do know that. Are aware of Christian Ramirez's Twitter and Instagram. He said, "Make it make sense, 2 sides of every story," and then deleted. So, do you think Christian Ramirez will be on that bus to Dingwall tomorrow?
As we were starting speaking about that, I was actually on Valerie Ramirez's Instagram to see if I can maybe get a wee exclusive. The only exclusive I'm getting is counting down the days until we see Nana. So that maybe does tell you something, but no, I think there's a lot of questions and very little answers at this precise moment in time. I mean, I think with regards to Ramirez, you can't have any unhappy campers around the dressing room. That's a given. And if Ramirez is unhappy, if I was Goodwin, I'd be ruthless. He's been ruthless with David Bates because David Bates has went to Belgium. He's been ruthless with Conor McClellan because Conor McClellan, to my understanding, through Aberdeen sources on the State of Scots Football group chat, has turned down 3 loan moves. And then St Johnstone eventually come in because Goodwin has, we've had a word with the agents and the representatives have been told to find a different way for Conor McClellan, St Johnstone's Conor's destination. So, for Ramirez, if he's unhappy, good one. You've got to be relentless because if you're not, you're going to find yourself having an unhappy camper, and one unhappy camper could descend in an unhappy changing room, which I don't think it will be, but it could turn out that way, and that you never like to see that because it gets toxic that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's on a considerable wage as well. Again, rumours and conjunction, we can talk about how much he's on, but I believe he's very, very well paid for obviously living in Aberdeen, and he's well remunerated for his services for being on the bench or not being involved tomorrow. In terms of Aberdeen, I've been really impressed in terms of how Goodwin has assembled the squad this summer. Of Liam Scales, a lot of Celtic fans here on watching this will have seen Liam Scales last season firsthand. I think he's been quite impressive at the back with Big Stuart. They've formed a good partnership. And I think as well, Majowski is a really good player. Vizendi Buzayan as well is coming into a game as well. So I do think Aberdeen will sneak it, and I don't think that'll be kind of cause for concern for Ross County tomorrow. I still think they will be kind of, potentially pushing for top 6. I don't think there'll be relegation concerns like they've had this time last season, but I do think Aberdeen will kind of sneak it tomorrow. I think we'll go with a kind of 1-0.
I'm going to go for 2-0 the Dons, and we've got enough time to speak about a game in Perth for St Johnstone against St Mirren. Now, the last time I went to St Johnstone St Mirren game in Perth, Greg, it was 0-0. Just for fun's sake, I've predicted 3-2 St Johnstone tomorrow. It's going to be an interesting one, this, because St Johnstone have recruited. They've not got that striker they wanted, or the fans wanted, but they have signed good players in good areas. St Mirren, high scoring, free scoring, defensively diligent. They've got everything about them just now.
Yeah, I mean, Mirren as well. I think did Joe Shaughnessy go to Hartlepool? Was that announced yesterday? Did he leave? I think there was talk of him leaving as well. Yeah, but even that, I'm just saying, likes of him. For me, I think he's a good defender. I think he's definitely Scottish Premiership material, and the fact that he couldn't kind of get a look in there. Obviously, he's played for St Johnstone, played for Aberdeen. He's been around. He's a kind of reliable player. I know there was talk around Greg Kilty potentially going to St Johnstone or back to Kilmarnock as well on loan. He wasn't. I think he stayed there on deadline day, but St Johnstone did need strikers, and whether you like it or not, I think they've got kind of mobile ones in both Nicky Clark and Conor McLennan. Be interesting to see how that kind of complements the.
Nicky Clark. Apologies, I forgot about Nicky Clark.
Nicky Clark signed as well in the week. Listen, I've said this a few times, but I think Nicky Clark is a really, really good player. I think he probably didn't get the credit he was due for Dundee United. I think we've both said that as well for last season. We've both impressed with him as well, especially before Tony Watt came in. He was doing a lot of the hard graft as well. But yeah, tomorrow, St Johnstone, obviously, did they get boiled by scoring 2 goals at Tynecastle last week? St Mirren have been in really, really good form so far this season. I will go. Let's make it a goal-scoring game. I'll go 2-2.
Yeah, I'm going to go 3-1 St Mirren. I just think Robbo's doing very, very well. The buddies just now, and I think they've got a lot of momentum about them. So that's all we've got time for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much for joining in and getting to know about Scottish football and getting the ins and outs about Scottish football, preparing for tomorrow's big games, including Celtic against Rangers. No Colin Watt. He's having a beer right now. Me and Greg have spoke enough in the last hour to merit having a pint of lager, whatever it is. So for me and Greg, thanks very much. We'll see you on Monday.